It's Arlen Schweiger here with CE Pro, and I'm happy to be joined by Håkan Olsson of Beemer Smart Home in Washington State in Kirkland, just outside of Seattle. Håkan, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
So Håkan, let's start off. Just tell me a little bit about your company, how long you've been around, the range of solutions you guys offer, the kind of clientele and applications that you deal with at Beemer Smart Home.
Yeah, the company was founded in 2005, but at that time it was merely a side business. I was in the corporate world working for Microsoft here in Seattle, and after that came at a corporation. And it really took a turn in 2012 when we did a project for an architect for their personal home. And they were so excited what we were doing and then introduced us to some of their high-end residential customers. And then that also led to that we got into high-riser solutions as well. So today we have about 50% in high-end residential and then 50% in high-risers, so MDU buildings.
All right, and so I imagine a lot of your clientele probably comes from that Microsoft environment as well out there by Seattle.
Yes, some of them, yeah. And yeah, we went full-time a little bit over 3 years ago, and since then, most of the growth that we've seen has come through working with architects and some high-end builders here in the area.
All right, so tell me a little bit about the solutions that you guys offer, and then where you show them. I believe you show them a lot out of your own, using your own home as a showroom, correct?
Yeah, and it's been a bit of an evolving story because originally we did mostly audio and video solutions, but then with the incredible growth of streaming services, both for video and audio, it has evolved into what we are doing today is full smart home solutions, where networking, really good performing networking is the foundation of what we do. And we actually require customers to get a very solid networking to begin with. Either they get it from us or someone else, but it has to be a networking. And then on top of that, whole house audio, theater solutions, but also smart home solutions, whether it's smart locks or smart thermostats or surveillance, whatever it may be. And then as an overarching control on the residential side, we are now working solely with Control4 solutions, partly because it's a very powerful tool for us as an integrator, but even more importantly for the end user, that they have a lot of flexibility to go in and do additional programming after the project is done. On the high-riser side, we are now partnered with Stratis IoT, who is the global leader in high-riser smart building solutions. So their tagline is from sidewalk to sofa. So we are their integration partner for projects here in Seattle, and we also supplement that with Control4 solutions for common areas and theaters and so on.
Excellent. So tell me about your own home there in terms of what you decided to put in it. And I imagine, is that kind of, has that been an evolving process over the years too, in terms of swapping things in and out? And we'll get to your theater in a moment because that's what we want to focus on. But you know, if you could take us a quick walkthrough of some of the rooms that you have going on there and some of those technologies and what you've been doing over the years.
Yeah, you know, as this evolved, what we found was that what really helps is to be able to show people what good, better, and best means. Because if you can't experience it in a home environment or the environment you're going to be in, how are you going to know what you want, right? So we were fortunate enough to get an offer on a new built house accepted a little bit over 4 years ago, where we then were able to go in and work with the builder to run all the cables and everything to have a solid setup in our own home. And what we're showing here is, of course, a solid networking throughout the house without any Wi-Fi dead spots, but also a whole house audio solution with good, better, best stealth acoustics, as well as traditional speakers, because most people don't even know about stealth, and being able to hear the good, better, best stealth, but also to compare that to how a traditional speaker sound is crucial. But we're then also showing the all-in-one Control 4 solution that you don't have to have 10 apps or app mania, as I call it, that you have to swap between an Sonos app and a Lutron app and a smart door app or whatever it is. You have everything in one, and that is very appealing for customers. So we built this to be able to have customers come in and get this experience, and then after that they can decide what they want out of that. And that includes the theater. And actually, before this COVID happened, we had a couple over. They were 75 years. They were 75 years old. They're now 76 years old, and they're building a new beautiful house in Laurelhurst. And they were not going to have a theater, but they were interested in music. But then I took them down to the theater, and then they just looked at each other and said, "Okay, we are going to have a theater now."
Great, it's that experience, right?
Yeah,
And especially when it comes to music, just being able to kind of sell that audio experience, I know really just resonates with clients all over the place, which is part of why we wanted to focus on audio solutions today. So you mentioned Stealth Acoustics. We wanted to talk about invisible speakers. Now, obviously, for distributed audio, they're going to make sense. You're going to have a lot of people who don't want to see anything on their ceilings, keep it nice and clean, and of course, they work great for that. But let's talk about first, I guess, and this will probably lead into it in terms of how you guys wound up becoming a Stealth Acoustics dealer, where that fit into your solution mix. And then we wanted to really focus on your home theater, which includes Stealth Acoustics as a full surround sound array, but also you're upgrading to the latest Stealth Acoustics speakers as well. So let's go dig into those things in terms of Håkan first. What made you guys go from traditional speakers, architectural speakers? How did invisible speakers come into the mix?
Yeah, so a little bit, the main reason or the background to that is that I'm a classical musician. It's actually my viola hanging here on the wall behind me. And before I pursued the high-tech area, I was a sound engineer for the Swedish broadcasting company before I started for Microsoft. And I've always appreciated the richness of acoustical music and hearing the warmth from acoustical instruments. And when I was working as a sound engineer, we were using quad electrostatic speakers because that was actually the only speaker that you could use to be able to not fatigue your ears if you're sitting in front of them 10 hours per day. Since I came to the US, I've been looking for speakers, especially now since we started with the business. And it was 5 years ago where I was introduced to Stealth Acoustics, and they invited me up to the manufacturing up here in Mount Vernon, just an hour outside of Kirkland. And I was absolutely blown away of the richness of the mid-range. It's the closest and the best I've heard since if I compare them with the quad electrostatics. At that point, it was the LR6, LR8, and LR3 speakers. And that was actually just before we then started to build out the house that we're using as a show model home. And after I heard that, I decided, okay, that's what we're going to go for, partly because of the invisibility, but also for the richness of the sound, because there's nothing else that I've heard that is as natural, even with traditional speakers, to be honest. The richness and the natural sound that you can hear when you're sitting in a string quartet, or if you're sitting in front of a string quartet or a piano or a guitar, it's amazing.
And it sounds like you have the trained ear for that to really have that be the kind of fit you're looking for in your own audio solutions. I imagine if it's good enough for someone with your background, then you have to have confidence that it'll be good enough for your customers as well.
Yeah, and it's not for everyone. Some people are looking for the I call it harshness of horn sound in a theater, because some people want that really impact sound, which is great in my mind, for 20 minutes, and then you just get fatigued. But my point is that Stealth may not be for everyone, but that's also why we built it out, so that you can listen to Stealth and see what Stealth experience even in theater is. But then we also have another TV room with traditional speakers, so you can compare what you want. The other aspect, which is actually very important with Stealth, is the dispersion of audio, because the Stealth speaker spreads the sound 170 degrees, as opposed to a traditional speaker that typically spreads about 110 or 120 degrees. And what that means in a whole house audio environment is that you avoid hotspots. So what we are able to showcase on the main floor in our demonstration home here is that as you walk around, it's great sound, it's consistent sound wherever you go. As opposed to a Sonos speaker or a traditional in-ceiling speaker, where you do hear hotspots as you're walking around.
So it's just a very uniform coverage then.
Yes.
So in terms of when you were originally designing your own home theater there, tell me about how that process went, how you decided to put in the amount of speakers that you did. You know, walk us through what that process was like. And then now I know we've been talking about how you recently or almost done completing an upgrade of the theater, but let's talk about the original theater and how that came to be, what any of the challenges were in terms of putting in Stealth, and then how some of those properties maybe even helped you with your placement of of those speakers throughout the home theater.
Yeah, so when it comes to the designing theaters, what we are using now is the Cydia tool that they have, which is great not only for speaker and electronics matching, but also, and even more importantly, I would say, for room acoustics, to get at least a baseline design. And since the Stealth speaker has a wide dispersion, that also creates it's not a challenge, but it's a consideration when you do theaters, in that since it spread the sound so much, you need to have very good acoustics to not get the reflections to optimize the sound. So that's one part.
So the acoustical treatments are going to be very important if you're going to do a Stealth surround, like a full dedicated Stealth surround sound system.
In a theater, yes, but I would say that is true also for traditional speakers.
Sure.
But it's even more important with Stealth speakers, because you have less of a focused sound, and the speaker disperses the sound a little bit more. Other than that, the challenges with Stealth that I see is more around coordinating with builders and architects to make sure that the structure is in place for it, because the Stealth speakers are built for 16-inch center stud walls and ceilings, and that's not always the case. Now, Stealth has great solutions with adjustable back boxes, but in some cases it has been, there's two specific challenges that I can think of. One is for ceilings. In some buildings, you have these structural I-beams that have only 8 inches openings between them. And that is too narrow to have a Stealth speaker. So in those cases, we have had to use the walls instead. The other challenge is that for high risers, if you have concrete ceilings, there are no studs to mount invisible speakers. But actually, in those cases, what we have done there is that we have been using the Stingray speaker, which is a patio speaker, and then have the architects match up with acoustical panels that are flush with those speakers. But those are kind of the challenges installing. And the other thing I would say is that if it's going to be a truly invisible application where you match it with sheetrock or plaster, the depth of the speaker once it's installed is very important. But Stealth ships shims that you can use to make sure that it's absolutely flush with the sheetrock, whether it's 1/2 inch or 5/8 sheetrock.
Okay.
So
and what was the configuration that you put into your original home theater when you were designing it, in terms of where the speakers were, how many there were, subwoofers, things like that? And then we can go into the process that you went to recently to upgrade those, and which products were originally installed, and then which ones you kind of moved onto for the latest in their technology.
Yeah, let's talk about theater. That's our passion, right? So originally, it was actually at the CEDIA show where I myself got to experience Atmos. It's now 6 years ago. So it was a no-brainer to put an Atmos solution into the theater when the house was built. So it's a total of 11 Stealth speakers in the theater, and then originally for subwoofers we had a James EMB, two James EMB powered subwoofers, two in the front, standing on the floor. What then happened was that over the last year, number one, we wanted to upgrade the lighting experience in the theater, as well as getting rid of the floor standing subwoofers, because that was a little bit of a sore point. Why have completely invisible Stealth speakers if you still need to have subwoofers?
Right, that's the main attraction, right? Or one of the main attractions.
And at the same time, Stealth came out with this new model called LRX85, which is a 2-panel solution where you have the mid-range and the bass in one panel and the higher mid-range and treble in a smaller panel above, which is absolutely amazing. It takes the Stealth to the next level of detail and resolution of the sound. So what we decided to do was to build a new fake wall in front of the theater to have an LCR application with the LRX85s. And also we went at that point, we decided to go to the in-wall James subwoofers. They have a QX1020 model with two 10-inch woofers on. So we have two of those to supplement. And the reason you do that is this one limitation with the Stealth technology is that you don't get that really impactful bass that you are used to in a theater. I would say for most people, the LRX83 and LRX85 is more than sufficient for whole house audio. But for a theater where you want this rumbling effect, that's a bit of a challenge. So that's why we supplement the Stealths with the James subwoofers for the very low end.
Sure, and you go with a company like James where they can do equally low profile. That way it kind of keeps the look of the theater as clean as possible. Tell me a little bit about those LCRs then, in terms of were those just all in the ceiling beforehand and that caused the shift that you wanted to have them behind the screen wall?
So originally we had LRX83 speakers. Sorry, no, it was LR3 speakers in the as LCR in the front wall, and that was behind an acoustically transparent screen. But those were built into the wall. So rather than trying to break the sheetrock out and pull them out, we built a new fake wall in front of it with just 2x4s. And then put the LRX85s in there. And then we have that covered now with acoustically transparent fabric and acoustical treatment panels next to the speakers.
Okay, so was there a size difference with the speakers as well? Is that part of what led to that?
Yes. Yeah, the LRX85 is an LR3 and an LR6 next to each other,
okay.
Size-wise. It's not those actual speakers, but size-wise, that's what it is. Okay. And by doing this, we can now very easily, we can just remove when they come out with the LRX87, or I'm not saying that they will be coming out with a new model called LRX87, but next time they come out with a new model, we can easily take these out and put new models in.
Gotcha.
And that's
okay.
also a consideration for customers that wants to upgrade over time.
Right. Okay. So that's kind of the main speakers. But what about the surrounds and the Atmos speakers? Where are they in the room? And were there some of these other challenges in terms of getting the wiring to them, or anything else that needed to be done?
Yeah, so we, as with any project, running wires has to be done before you do sheetrock, or you need to work with the sheetrocker that can come in and break it up. But in our demo theater, they were already in place, and we did not do anything with the surround or Atmos speakers. So the constellation in our theater is you have the LCR in front, and then you have at ear level surrounds on the sides, and then you have, and for that we are using LR8s, And for the back surrounds, we have LR6, two LR6 speakers. And then in the ceiling, there's 4 of the LR6 for the Atmos effects. So that's the setup.
All right. And in terms of, putting Stealth into home theater as opposed to distributed audio, have you found with your solutions that you offer on the electronic side, are there any components that you find mate particularly well in terms of, the amplification, the processing, or are Stealth pretty, relatively universal to work with?
Yeah, I mean, it works with anything. We are both a Denon and Marantz and Yamaha dealer. So, and to begin with, we were using the highest end of the Marantz preamp, and then tried various power amplifiers with that. What I found, which works best and sounds best, and the biggest difference is in the mid-range again, is audio control. From a preamp perspective, audio control is working with a company called Direct Live for the calibration. And you can do so much more minute adjustments with Direct Live compared to what you can do with Odyssey or other more mainstream applications. So that's one component. The other component is the amplification. And I have personally not heard anything that comes even close to what audio control can do from an audio quality. But it's also, what's really great with audio control is that they run very cool. They only use power when it's needed and where it's needed, which means that they run cool. There are no fans, so they're quiet and they're cool. I'm a big fan of audio control, and it also happens to be local as well.
Right,
Very
I was going to
lucky
say
here.
the audio coming out of the state of Washington, right where you are, is some pretty good options then. So
Yeah.
in terms of then the theater's up and running. Well, let's talk about, obviously you're going to have the lighting going on with the upgraded theater as well. But considering how you've demoed the theater in the past, and certainly, we'll set aside the COVID talk for now in terms of how you plan on demonstrating the upgraded theater. But in terms of, the original Stealth Acoustics theater in your home, what are some of the ways that we're used to bringing in prospective clients to come and check out the theater, and really just basically your attempt to kind of blow them away with the audio of that home theater?
Yeah, the way we have done it is to provide the experience, and we provide the experience with the content that we think really makes a difference. So as an example, one of our latest favorites to showcase an Atmos theater is the Greatest Showman with the Swedish opera singer Jenny Lind coming on stage. That experience, sitting in the middle of the audience and just experience her voice and the symphony orchestra around you, is fantastic. And another great example is Eric Clapton's Live in Albert Hall that is available on Kaleidoscape. It's an incredibly well done recording from an audio engineering perspective. And I can say that because I used to do that when I was a sound engineer. And I can tell you that after we upgraded to the LRX85s, I have never heard an acoustical guitar from Eric Clapton sound so real and so rich. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
So the upgrade is complete in terms of the audio portion of it then. And so you've been able to go in there and enjoy a whole variety of different soundtracks and things like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of the concerts. Obviously those are going to be, huge sounding in there, and your personal background in terms of the musical side of things. How about the movie side of things and the TV audio? I know you said that, the Greatest Showman, and offered some the musical angle of that. But what about, just kind of your Rock'em Sock'em action flicks, things like that? I know you mentioned about adding subwoofers perhaps, but in terms of other aspects of Stealth Acoustics and, the movie side of things versus the music side of things, what do you typically lean on there to show customers, hey, listen for this or listen for that?
Yeah, Mad Max, I think, is something that a lot of people typically use, and we use that as well, both for the richness of the what you see on the screen, but also the audio. And believe it or not, Sonic the Hedgehog is actually a really good demo track as well. And to be honest, anyone that sits in our theater and experienced that with Stealth, they are sold. Yeah, we do show them traditional speakers and the horn experience that you get from Klipsch and others. And once they hear the difference, the richness of the sound that you get with Stealth, they're sold.
And Håkan, in terms of how you brace clients to prepare for that room, do you tell them anything about the speaker setup? Do you let them just go in and experience audio and say, hey, by the way, you can't see anything here because these are Stealth acoustic speakers, or do you kind of lay it out for them to begin with and then just kind of see their reaction at, really, like, these invisible speakers are providing this kind of sound? What sort of approach do you take that way?
Yeah, so once we lead them down in the theater, they have already seen the invisible speakers in good, better, best, because we have LR6, LR8, and then LRX83s installed on the main floor. So they already know about the invisible experience. And when we take them to the theater, the first thing we do is we show them and point out where the 13 speakers are in the theater. And then after that, the first thing we do is actually show them the Dolby Atmos demo track with the Amaze and the Leaf track, so that they get to experience how the sound just travel around you, because that's something that most people have not experienced. And then from there, we adjust what we show depending on who the customer is of course. But again, it's all about the experience, being there in the middle of it all.
Right. And so when you see their reactions to it, what is that usually? Do they have some sort of sense? Is it a big wow factor for them to not see the speakers, to have, everything just kind of clean and say, oh yeah, I could see that in my own home?
Yeah, that's generally the case. They said, I can't believe that it can be this much sound for something that you can't see. Because especially the more advanced customers that have had 3 or 4 houses with theaters before, they're used to either seeing big floor standing speakers, or that you have cabinets with the acoustically transparent grills where the sound comes out from. So being able to sit and have this experience without seeing anything, it really takes the experience to the next level.
And so, Håkan, what's it meant to you overall in terms of, you did the theater several years ago with the Stealth solutions. Did that kind of become a template for you in terms of your company being able to use that? And did most of your theaters kind of follow suit, being invisible theaters, invisible sound theaters, or do you kind of do a mix?
Yeah, so it's either or, I would say. And to date, it's only one client that has decided to not do Stealth in the theater. And the reason that they did not want to do Stealth in their theater, well, I was going to say, this customer was blown away with Stealth, and they ended up with 38 LRX83s and James subwoofers around their house, and they now call it their dance house. But with the theater, the husband there is a big audio enthusiast, and he likes to upgrade speakers over time. So we actually ended up getting him a full Atmos triad system, which sounds great as well. But it is the more direct, more impact sound, which he likes for the theater. And then those are all floor standing speakers, and then for in ceiling traditional in ceiling triad speakers. And he plans to change out the speakers every 2 or 3 years. And for a client like that, Stealth might not be the best solution for them.
Sure, but it sounds like overall the close rate on implementing Stealth in dedicated theater rooms is a very high percentage, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, we do half of our business in high-end residential and half of them in the high-risers. And the other aspect of the value proposition for Stealth is, because they're hidden, no one can damage them or steal them. which is a big thing in for high risers. So to be able to have this experience without being showing anything, it's important. And also for residentials, that dogs or kids don't damage the speakers is another aspect of it.
Right, no potential accidents or any,
Yeah.
anything of that sort. Sure.
Yeah.
So Håkan, then going forward in terms of you're going to have this the upgraded theater done very soon, fully complete. What's the process then going to be from there in terms of showing it, getting clients to see it? When are you doing virtual tours of it? I guess that would be tough right now. Or are you doing it on a very limited basis where you have people still coming into your show home and trying to do kind of the in-person demonstration process?
Yeah, I mean, COVID is a challenge because nothing compares to doing a live in-person experience. But part of our recent upgrades, not only in the theater, but in the rest of the house, was a Ketra lighting solution. We are a direct dealer with Lutron for both lights and shades. And what we are doing now is virtual demonstrations where we can show the daylighting experience and to show that you can change the colors for a Seahawks theme, or I have to say Seahawks because we're in Seattle, right?
Of course.
And a Christmas theme or a holiday theme. So you can still do those experiences. You obviously can't demonstrate stealth other than being in person. So that is a challenge. And right now we're in lockdown again here until mid-December, and who knows what's going to happen after that. So we just have to do what we can.
All right. Well, yeah, we're certainly hoping things turn around, especially up there in Washington. But it sounds like you're leaning on the Stealth Acoustics technology, and it's working out very well for you. Any other final words of advice for installers who are looking at it and saying, all right, we can do invisible speakers as distributed audio, but I haven't really thought about home, full-blown Atmos home theater until maybe, your discussion of it just now. What maybe one last one or two pieces of advice for dealers?
Well, what I typically in the industry, what I typically hear is that, yeah, don't go with invisible speakers because they're not going to be good enough for the end customers. And I'd say, let the customer decide that. If it's a well-designed system with electronics that can support the speakers, I pretty much guarantee that any customer will just love it. And in my string quartet, the first violinist, he experienced it in the theater, and I think he had a really good comment. He said, "Okay, now I can hear the soul of the music." And that was what I experienced as well when I first heard my reference track with Stealth Acoustics. You can really hear the warmth and the soul of the music, not just the details, but the richness of it.
Yeah, and in doing so, I guess you're able to kind of strip away every kind of distraction that they might have while they're listening and have it be just this, really intimate experience with the sound.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Very good. Well, yeah. Håkan, we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And, we look forward to seeing some installations of your Stealth Acoustics theaters in the future. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.